discussing has a lot to do with scientific and technological development. So, but also, as a lawyer, my approach will be, of course, the legal aspects of, in this case, climate change. That some sort of similar questions arise about how to deal with scientific and technological developments, comparable questions as compared to the topic just discussed, bioprospecting, new development. How do you deal with that from the perspective of the current law? What is the desired new law, if necessary, but also how do you get to new law, to new regulation? So that is also the theme of this lecture on the broad topic of climate change and the law of the sea, and with a special reference to questions related to the rising sea level resulting from climate change. What I would like to do is first a few general remarks, observations, introductory observations on climate change and how, what it has to do with the law of the sea, or the law of the sea has to do with climate change. Then, since this is a broad topic, I've selected two issues to go into a little bit more detail as examples of the issues that are relevant and will have to be dealt with in this context. One is marine geoengineering, and in particular, the question of ocean iron fertilization. How do you deal with this new sort of potential method to prevent further or mitigate global warming? How can the law deal with that? And then, totally different topic, sea level rise, issues of adaptation to the results of climate change, the effects of climate change, the rising sea level. And here, apart from the issue of the shifting baselines as a result of the rising sea level, I would, if there is still time, like to say a few words about a topic which is essentially not within the area of the law of the sea, but just as an example of how sea-related, ocean-related issues can have far-reaching effects, existential effects for communities, in this case, the potential vanishing of entire states, which is something that international law also will have to deal with. And a few concluding remarks, if there is still time. Well, very briefly, I'm not sure what exactly you've already had previously in lectures on issues related to climate change, but I will very briefly identify a few points as the background to what follows. It's important to differentiate between the causes and effects of climate change when you look at the issues. Well, the causes, as you know, global warming through the emission of greenhouse gases, and then measures have to be taken for the prevention and mitigation of these emissions of greenhouse gases, and that is mainly the field of international environmental law, not so much of the law of the sea, because the emission of greenhouse gases occurs as a result mainly of activities on land. There's also a marine component there, ships, the propulsion of ships. They also lead to emission of greenhouse gases, and even there action has been taken in the framework of IMO. I will not go into that now. It's mainly general international environmental law here. And then, of course, you have all kinds of effects. In a moment, I will deal a little bit more detail with the effects, especially for the ocean. But in general, climate change, it has all kinds of effects, and the world's community, world society, states, peoples will have to take measures for mitigation of the effects of climate change in general and adaptation, of course. We have to adapt to what is occurring. Now, specifically, that was in general, specifically to the ocean, our focus here at the Yeosu Academy of Below the Sea. In the area of the causes still of climate change, the warming of the atmosphere through greenhouse gases also leads to warming of the ocean. And the ocean also acts as a reservoir of greenhouse gases, resulting in acidification of the ocean, so effects on the ocean. It warms and it acidifies. Now, effects for the ocean, on the ocean of these climate change, warming and acidification. You have the melting sea ice. Of course, yesterday in the lecture on the polar areas that were dormant, we've seen that the access to the areas, especially in the north, the northern sea routes, melting sea ice will open opportunities in the Arctic for navigation. The rising sea level, we'll get back to that in a moment, as one of the most important effects of ocean warming. But there are also other kinds of effects, and I just mentioned that the changing ocean circulation patterns, which will have an effect in many respects also on the weather conditions in the world, impacts on marine organisms, and effects on the productivity and range of fish stocks. Fish stocks may move northward or southward. This has an effect, for instance, on the way that regional marine fisheries management organizations will have to manage their fish stocks. I will not be able to go into that area, but maybe other lecturers will still be able to address that. So all these consequences may have more or less international legal implications. Now, these effects, to some extent, need to be prevented or mitigated in order to prevent problems for society. And as I said, we have to adapt to these changes, to these effects. And I've selected two topics, as I mentioned already, the marine geoengineering as a topic, in particular ocean iron fertilization, and the effects of the rising sea level for further discussion in the next, 15 minutes. Okay, in the area of prevention and mitigation, then later in the area of adaptation, sea level rise, but first prevention in the area of prevention and mitigation, the topic of marine geoengineering. Geoengineering, you probably know, is sort of the manipulation of natural processes by man, which is increasingly attracting attention as a result of developing ideas to prevent and mitigate global warming. People are looking into methods to cool the Earth's temperature. It's warming up, so what do? Can you cool it down? What can we do to mitigate or to some extent prevent, or at least to mitigate what is going on? And one of the potential effects, potential methods for this cooling the Earth's temperature is ocean iron fertilization, OIF. That's a method to increase the uptake of carbon dioxide through the introduction of iron particles into the ocean. Now, I'll explain it in a moment a little bit more, but there are many uncertainties about the effects and the effectiveness of ocean iron fertilization. and concerns have been expressed about experiments with ocean iron fertilization, and those concerns have led to all kinds of international discussions about how to deal with this potential method of cooling the Earth's temperature, ocean iron fertilization. How does it work? A ship offloads iron particles. The iron causes growth of phytoplankton, which captures the carbon dioxide. That plankton sinks. Some reach depths where carbon may stay for 100 years or more. Now, there are all kinds of, the advocates of ocean iron fertilization say, well, this is really, this will help with cooling the Earth's temperature. But there's also the fear that the iron will lead to the depletion of deep water oxygen, alters the food chain, and promotes toxic species, etc., etc., and that the CO2 will soon resurface. So you see, scientists don't know yet how effective it will be as a method for cooling the Earth's temperature. In fact, through this method. But also there are real fears of deleterious effects on the ocean. Scientists had thought of this idea and then started to make experiments to see if it would really work, how it would really work. About 10, 15 years ago, the first ideas were developed, tests were made. But then, of course, even also within scientific circles, serious concerns were expressed about these experiments. So the question was, okay, do we want this? But there are so many uncertainties. How can we regulate this? And this is, to some extent, perhaps comparable to also the issue of marine bioprospecting that was just discussed in the previous lecture. Now, if lawyers are then become involved in this problem, what do we do? What do we do with this? You look at, of course, you start with the existing law. What do we have? And only then, if you know exactly what you have, what is the applicable law? What's the current law? Are there any? Does it create problems? Are there any gaps? The word gaps was already mentioned earlier this morning. So when you look for the applicable law, there are two international conventions that could be relevant. The CBD, you all know that's the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the London Convention. Some of you may not know yet what the London Convention is. It used to be called the London Dumping Convention, but it was later, I still don't know exactly why this word dumping had to be omitted. It has to do with the scope of the convention, but still, anyway, most people still talk about the London Dumping Convention, but the London Convention 1972, which was amended by the 1996 London Protocol. Dumping is the deliberate disposal of waste or other matter at sea. And if you look at ocean iron fertilization, it's obvious that you are offloading from a ship iron particles, so you are putting something into the ocean. Question is this dumping, is it covered by the London Dumping Convention? So should the London Dumping Convention be deemed to be applicable, and that the whole regulatory regime of that convention has to be implemented or not? But, of course, here the iron particles are not dumped, they are not waste. It's not a sort of a deliberate disposal of waste or other matter, but it's putting materials into the ocean for a specific purpose. And that seems to be, in principle, excluded, but perhaps it could also be, again, included in the London Convention's provisions, because the London Convention says that the placement of waste or other matter, other than for the mere disposal, is excluded. So the real disposal is the main purpose, disposal of waste or other matter, to prevent that, or to regulate that, the purpose of the London Convention. But it is for other purposes, it is not included in the regulatory scheme, unless what is being done would be contrary to the aims of the London Convention. So then you can say, well, the placement of matter in this case, since it has deleterious effects, negative effects, harmful effects on the marine environment, it is contrary to the aim of the London Convention. Well, lawyers can have long discussions, just like the question of marine bioprospecting, partly high seas freedom, or is it something covered by the regime for the international seabed area. Here as well, you can have long discussions. Is ocean iron fertilization an activity that is covered by the London Convention or not? It's a sort of a borderline case, you could say. All kinds of discussions. Of course, the CBD, biodiversity concerns were great, so that's where the main discussions took place originally. And then, because of these concerns about the effects of ocean iron fertilization within the framework of the CBD, there was a resolution adopted, a recommendation, not a binding decision, a resolution recommending a moratorium on ocean iron fertilization tests, experiments, or even the activity as such. The same then, because the Convention on Biological Diversity is not a regulatory convention in itself. It does not contain a system of prohibited acts and licenses for other activities. That's the field of the London Convention. So the London Convention was looked at as the mechanism where perhaps a regulatory regime could be developed, provided that the activity was covered by the convention at all. The discussion I just mentioned. Now there, again, like that's in the CBD, first non-binding measures were adopted, recommendations strictly regulating any experiments with ocean iron fertilization, and then ultimately a decision was taken in 2013, or the years leading up to 2013, that in the framework of the London Convention, it would be appropriate to adopt binding measures, but for that purpose, the convention itself had to be changed to provide a clear legal basis so that it was without doubt that it was an activity regulated by the London Convention, and in a sense you would say the scope of the London Convention was extended to cover marine geoengineering and ocean iron fertilization as the first sort of part of marine geoengineering that was to be regulated in that framework. So in 2013, an amendment to the London Protocol, the protocol that had changed, in fact, the London Convention is a bit complicated, but for the time being, for now, it suffices that in a formal sense it is the London Protocol that was amended in 2013. It's not yet in force. My latest information is that only the United Kingdom, of all states, has yet accepted the amendments to the London Protocol. I can see that many states need time to prepare because it would really involve national legislative implementing measures. It's not that easy, but I suspect that in the next several years we will see more and more acceptances of these amendments to the London Protocol. What happened? There's a new article, it's this, in the London Protocol, and 2 annexes even, so there's a lot of work that has been done on detailed rules for assessing whether or not a particular activity and under what conditions it may be allowed. So you need a permit a whole new regime was made for marine geoengineering. So if you contrast this to bioprospecting, of course it's a problem definitely a problem of a different scale, a different background, but here you see that within a relatively short period of time, states have been able to specifically focus on a particular new scientific and technological development, marine geoengineering, more specifically ocean iron fertilization, and adopted a binding legal regime for that specific activity, which I think is quite remarkable that it's still possible to do that so quickly. So marine geoengineering activities involving placement of matter into the sea, listed in this new Annex 4, are prohibited unless they are carried out with a permit. And a permit can only be given, according to all these detailed rules in the annexes, for legitimate scientific research. And only ocean iron fertilization is now listed as an activity that could be permitted. So it's a very, very strict approach. You could see, I think the precautionary approach in international law is here applied very strictly in this case. So ocean iron fertilization for really sort of operational ocean iron fertilization is still not yet permitted. Only legitimate scientific research will be permitted under strict conditions. So this is a very cautious approach, but at an early stage of scientific and technological developments. In my view, highly interesting development. Just to give you the full definition of marine geoengineering. So the London Protocol now covers marine geoengineering, but within the broad field of marine geoengineering, only a sub-activity, one particular activity, ocean iron fertilization, is regulated, and the rest is not. Other marine geoengineering activities that would involve the placement of any matter in the ocean is, for the parties to the London Protocol, not allowed, is prohibited. Very, very cautious approach. Well, the deliberate intervention in the marine environment to manipulate natural processes, including to counteract anthropogenic climate change and or its impacts. And that has the potential to result in deleterious effects, especially where those effects may be widespread, long-lasting, or severe. So that's a definition of marine geoengineering covered by the London Protocol, the London Convention System, the London Convention System. And the subspecies of marine geoengineering, ocean iron fertilization, is now regulated in detail, only allowed for scientific research experiments. So this is an example in the field of prevention and mitigation of the effects of climate change, global warming on the ocean. Are there any questions, comments on marine geoengineering, in particular ocean iron fertilization? If not, I will now continue with the other topic in the sphere of adaptation to global warming, especially the result of global warming, the rising sea level. The warming of the ocean, the warmer seawater, means that the sea level will rise. There will be ice will be melting. Ocean, warmer water expands, so it takes more volume. You get more. The volume of the ocean increases as a result of ocean warming, and melting ice will add to the water in the ocean, etc., etc. This all will result in a rising sea level. We don't know how much sea level rise. It has been rising for at least half a century, very slowly, but the rate of increase is is increasing. I'm not a scientist, but when I talk to scientists who know a lot about this, they tell me that, usually scientists, of course, tell us that they don't know exactly how things will develop. So they don't predict, although they try to approximate possible developments. But it seems to me that they are now increasingly pointing at developments that could lead to a quicker rise of sea level than anticipated, say, in the past decade or so. In the past decade, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which provides every several years very detailed, in my view, very useful reports, not only on the purely scientific aspects of climate change, but also on the socio-economic effects of climate change. There was a prediction that during the 21st century, the sea level may rise between a half and probably less than 1 meter. Latest information seems to point to a potential larger increase of more than 1 meter, and even significantly more than 1 meter during this century. But we'll have to see, and I'm sure that you will see more ultimately of the sea level rise than I will see. But it will, in the longer run, one thing is a fact: the sea level will continue to rise in this century, probably at least 1 meter, but maybe more. And next century, even if we succeed in mitigating global warming through ocean iron fertilization or other marine geoengineering and other geoengineering projects in general, even if that will result, if we can keep global warming to less than 2 degrees, the ocean sea level will continue to rise. So the problem is here, and that means that adaptation measures, whatever happens with our prevention of global warming efforts, we will have to take adaptation measures. We have to deal with the issue. Now, the low-lying coastal areas are the most vulnerable, obviously, and it depends on the particular geographical situation of coastal areas. The lower the gradient, the more the sea level rise will affect the coastal areas. If you have a steep gradient, of course, you will have less problems. But a country like Norway will have much less problems with sea level rise than a country like Vietnam or Bangladesh, with huge low-lying coastal areas, where a 1 meter rise of sea level could cover 50, 80, 100 kilometers of coastal areas in the longer term. And in particular, of course, island states will be vulnerable to the rising sea level, because if you live on an island, obviously you need, well, where do you go if sea level is rising? If you live on the mainland or on the continent, you have the vast continent behind you, and depending on other countries or the parts of your own country, the willingness of the population there to accept the migration of people, you can move. On an island, of course, it's different, because on an island you probably will be in a position that you will have to move either to another island or to the continent. If the rising sea level rises to such a level that the island may become uninhabitable. So, first of all, the rising sea level results in loss of land, habitable land, or land in general. You lose land. And most people, when they think of the rising sea level, think in terms of loss of land area, obviously. Where people live, or don't live, they have to move. And that raises huge issues, existential issues for people about potential future evacuation or at least resettlement, migration of people. And that could even lead to the next question: if people have to leave areas, and especially islands, island states, if no population is left on the islands, can the state as such survive? Can you have an island state without a population, or even without a territory? Very existential questions. These questions apply only to the existential question about the future of the state, apply only to a small number of states, especially in the Pacific, and in Kiribati, Federal States of Micronesia, Tuvalu, one or two others, states consisting exclusively, entirely of very low-lying islands, but also the Maldives in the Indian Ocean are an example of such a state, constituted entirely of low-lying islands. And when you look at this from a world scale, with billions of people living in the world, and you realize that in these 5 or 6 specific island states and the Maldives and the Indian Ocean, less than 500,000 people probably live here in total, perhaps just over 500,000 people. Of course, on a world scale, this looks like sort of a minor problem. But if you happen to live on those islands, it's not a minor problem, because the whole future of the community is at stake. So for them, this is a really existential issue. What will happen to our society, to our state in the future if the sea level continues to rise and our land becomes uninhabitable? Where do we go, and can we continue as a state? But first, before I come back to those issues, if time allows, another issue, and that's not the loss of habitable land, but the loss of sea, which sounds, of course, a bit strange, loss of sea, but from a legal perspective, loss of sea areas over which you have jurisdiction, authority, territorial sea, exclusive economic continental shelf. That is also affected because of the issue of the baselines. If sea level rises, the baseline from which the breadth of the territorial sea and other maritime zones is measured, the baseline moves. The baseline, of course, is a movable line, or moving line according to the natural processes of the sea level rise. The exercise of authority over these offshore areas is for all coastal populations, and this does not, what I'm now talking about, does not only apply to these low-lying island states, but to all low-lying areas, other coastal areas, also continental states, low-lying areas. Of course, these offshore areas are important for these coastal populations, mainly because of the marine resources, both the mineral and the living resources. And as I said, the shifting of the baselines is a result. If the sea level rises, the baseline, the normal baseline, the low water line along the coast will shift landwards. So in principle, under the current rules of international law, when the sea level rises, baseline shifts landward, and that could, in some areas, could be not just a question of a few meters, but could be an issue of kilometers, even more than a few kilometers. The baseline moves landward, so the outer limit of the territorial sea moves landward, and the outer limit of the exclusive economic zone moves landward. That is the application of the current normal rules of international law, depending on the coastal grade. And in case of islands, of course, the zone, if the island disappears, in principle, under the rules of international law, the sea, the territorial sea of such an island, or the exclusive economic zone of such an island, could disappear entirely. Talking about islands, one particular situation that could occur is that a feature that is regarded as a fully entitled island could become, as a result of sea level rise, to be sort of qualified as a rock under the rules of Article 121, paragraph 3 of the Law of the Sea Convention, so that the feature may still be there and still have its territorial sea, but a smaller territorial sea, but no longer a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, if you apply the current rules of international law dealing with entitlement to maritime zones and areas. In this context, it's important to point at the issue of agreed maritime boundaries. Obviously, if you have a neighbor within 24 nautical miles from baselines, you will have to agree on a territorial sea boundary. Within 400 nautical miles, to agree on an exclusive economic zone boundary. The boundary issues, I think, will be addressed 1 or 2 days from now, on Thursday. Tomorrow. In detail, so I don't have to deal with those. I just want to mention from this perspective of potential laws of entitlement to sea areas, to maritime jurisdictional zones. If you have an agreed maritime boundary, agreed in the sense that you have a treaty with your neighbor, you are, in my view at least, in a much better position. Although I recently read an article which contests this. It's the first time that I read this, but it's now contested. In my view, when you have a boundary agreement, the boundary remains in place, even if subsequently, for instance, in this case, baselines shift. If there are subsequent developments, geographical developments, that the boundary agreement. The boundary determined, the boundary fixed in the boundary agreement remains in place. This is certainly the case with land boundaries. In my view, it is also applicable to maritime boundaries, and definitely with respect to the boundaries of territorial sea. In my view, also boundaries of the exclusive economic zone. But it has been argued recently that this rule of international law on the permanence boundaries does not necessarily apply to exclusive economic zone continental shelf boundaries, and that the so-called fundamental change of circumstances rule might apply as a result of sea level change to such boundaries. My personal opinion is that that view is not correct, but I wanted to share with you that apparently there is a debate going on. The International Law Association, which is a non-governmental organization that is whose objectives are to contribute to the elucidation and further development of international law, has established a few years ago a committee to study the issues of the effects of sea level rise in international law. And that committee looks at all the issues that I'm addressing at the moment, including this question of the shifting baseline, but also this more specific question of the permanence of maritime boundaries. And I hope that within about 2 years, when the ILA committee has issued its report, we will probably have a sort of an authoritative view on this issue of the permanence, notwithstanding later regression of the baseline, the permanence of already agreed, in the treaty agreed maritime boundaries. I think it is important that this is clarified, that there's no sort of doubt in this respect, in particular for coastal states that are confronted with the sea level rise issues. Now, what can you do? Apart from fixing your boundaries by an agreement, which is my first recommendation to states, what could the other recommendations be to states which are seriously confronted with the issue of the rising sea level and the effects on the baseline moving landward? Now, the first defense, of course, is to defend artificially, to conserve the natural baseline. You build a dike. The Dutch, for instance, are very good at building dikes. The whole country almost is the result of having built dikes centuries ago to keep the water on the North Sea out. But this is not only expensive, but very often, of course, simply impracticable, especially when you have a lot of islands. You can't build dikes around all these islands where only a few people live. Some countries will definitely, and there are some countries are already doing this, busy conserving artificially by engineering activities the natural baseline, but it's only of limited use for many states. For lawyers, another approach to this issue would be to simply, for those states that are confronted with the issue, to simply claim the areas that they now have, continue to claim those areas as theirs, as a sort of a historic title. So the argument would be that they have historically had these areas under their sovereignty or exercise sovereign rights over the area, and that they simply are entitled to continue to do that because of historic rights or regard them as historic waters. There are examples of historic waters claims in the international law, international law of the sea. To some extent, historic waters is a notion that is accepted. But my view would be, don't rely on this approach, because it would be really a novel introduction of a novel idea, totally new notion of historic waters. You don't need it, and you would get only into big legal discussions about what exactly the nature of the claim is. So I would not advise to make unilateral claims of historic waters. But now we come to a solution. If states want to prevent the application of the current rules of international law, shifting baselines with all the result of shifting outer limits as well, create a new rule. And that can be done in 2 ways. You can change the law of the Sea Convention or make a new agreement on shifting baselines as a result of sea level rise, or if that's an impossible avenue, you could try to develop a new rule of general customary international law, which would say that states affected by the rising sea level could maintain, by maintaining their current outer limits, could maintain their rights over those areas. So simply by practicing this, states at least may try to get acceptance of this new rule of customary international law. And it seems that, especially in the Pacific, some states are already moving into this direction, and it would be interesting for you, if you're interested in the topic as such, to watch what is going on at the moment, in particular in the Pacific, but maybe also in other areas. It's the practice of states, if they continue to claim outer limits, even though it becomes obvious that those outer limits do no longer correspond to the distance from the baseline, 12 nautical miles or 200 nautical miles distance from the baseline, and if other states do not protest, you may watch the birth of a new rule of customary international law. So that could be the approach as a result of the rising sea level, resulting from global warming, the legal approach to adapt to this, to simply continue to exercise your rights over those areas, even though baselines have shifted considerably, or even in some cases, the originator of the baseline, the island feature, may have disappeared at all, completely. We'll have to see. The ILA committee will report on this in 2 years' time, I hope. And then also we'll have to state practice. Are there any comments, observations, or questions? Yes.
You say due to this sea level rising, and maybe the capacity of American feature may change from a fully tidal island into a rock.
Yeah.
And so my question is whether we should look at the capacity of the American feature from the past, or look at its current capacity. And the further question is, this is one situation, but maybe there will be another opposite situation, like global warming. Maybe the American future existing in a complex. Maybe in the future they will have more vegetation cover, and its capacity will grow. So we treating these two situations, we should adopt the
Well, the question is, from my perspective here, is the question what law we desire to be applicable. I'm not going to say anything more about the current law on this issue, and you probably will understand why I cannot do that. Because I would be interpreting perhaps an arbitral award, which is not something I can do. So my point here is just looking at the desire, what kind of law we want, we desire for the future, and as I have expressed my opinion earlier, and I think I just did as well. I could imagine that the law will develop in the direction that if a feature would, as a result of these physical, the global warming, the rising sea level, would be regarded as no longer having the capacity to sustain human habitation or economic life on its own, fully entitled island, as a result of sea level rise, that from a perspective of justice, have a whole discussion about this, who caused global warming, etc., etc. It would be desirable to keep such entitlements as they were, just like the baseline, current baseline, and keep those. So that is my answer as far as the future development of international law is concerned. I first go to the, I would say, the regular participants of the academy.
Can you please come to your slide like before, the one before, where you said this new rule of customary international law, please?
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will have my personal opinion. It's that I will have a problem with this entitlement to keep existing outer limits of offshore areas, because take for instance, I don't know, the Maldives. That's this island. They sent a maritime declaration zone.
Yeah.
So we know that this is a unilateral act of state when they do this maritime declaration zone. So it might be or it might not be that
But
it's
of
in
course,
accordance.
it must be in accordance with international law at that time.
Yeah, but when the baselines could be that this state will throw them with excessively.
Yeah, but that's a separate issue. If under current law that would be an excessive, not in accordance with the rule of baselines and straight baselines, etc., then you have a separate problem. That's at the moment that it would not be in conformity. I'm talking about the situation where the current outer limits are in accordance with current international law. Then I'm stressing we are talking about, on the one hand we have current law, and the question is, okay, but the current law will lead to the shifting baselines which could considerably affect a particular group of states. What do we desire for the future law for those states? And that's where I advocate the option of allowing them to fix these outer limits.
You don't see a possibility instead of developing this new rule of international law. It couldn't be like we can take other principles of international law which are outside the scope of the law of the UN Convention. Like for instance, you have territorial integrity, sovereignty over natural resources. You have also self-determination. Is it not possible to keep the rights that this population will have in that way?
Yeah, well, that's a whole, that's a quite a, you can have quite a discussion on that. I think some of those, what you mentioned, are sort of in the background of this idea why international law may wish to allow the states to keep these outer limits. Permanent sovereignty over national resources, self-determination. Perhaps they could help to inform this desired new law. I think sort of it's more a notion of justice, perhaps climate justice, that could be invoked. But maybe that what you mentioned could help as well. I'm not so sure it really helps, but why not?
Well, I just in the context of states which extend to continental shelf limits, of course, we fix those limits are beyond this under the convention. So it's quite extraordinary that we would have a separate regime.
Yeah, for continental shelf and not for other areas. I
I
didn't mention that. You're right.
Yeah.
I didn't mention it to make it not.
They'll have a workshop question on exactly that.
Oh, so okay, good.
I want to follow up on this.
Yeah.
Sorry. So this idea of a new law is
Yes.
a huge step, but
Yes.
is it possible within the existing, if you look at Article 7.2, and Article 7.2 is provides an option for a state to maintain its baseline
Yeah.
in the presence of a delta or other
Yeah.
natural conditions, the coastline, where the coastline is highly unstable. And if we just define a changing sea level
Yeah.
as a condition where a coastline is highly unstable, doesn't that provide an option to?
That is, you're absolutely right. I just like the previous point, I also didn't mention this in the lecture, it's in my article, which is in the materials, I hope, as an example of where current law even sort of helps to address this, but I think to a somewhat limited extent, because it says also, unless you can keep these, you can fix the base, the limits, unless you later, until you later change. So it provides some, it is intended to provide some stability, but not necessarily a sort of a permanence that I'm advocating now for the future, and it was not included specifically because of sea level rise, but it was of course included because of natural Bangladesh coast.
The other side of that, though, is that anything that calls for a permanent fixing of the baseline creates a problem from a safety and navigation perspective, because Article 5 ties the baseline to what the coastal state uses on its official chart. And a coastal state that wants to honor safe navigation, no matter what, will have to change its chart.
Yes.
You can't, sea level changes.
Exactly.
Change the chart.
You have to take things into account.
Yeah, so as long as Article 5 is there, the coastal state will have to change its baseline, to change its sea level. And we have a kind of catch-22.
Yeah, but you can make a distinction between, it's a technical discussion perhaps, but the navigational charts are, the charts are mainly for navigation, but they have also serve this purpose at the moment of the baseline for entitlements. Maybe in the future there will have to be
decoupled.
Yes, yeah. So this is a consequence. What you point out is a consequence of this potential new approach, and of course it's only an idea. But it struck me that when this discussion started at the end of the 1980s, I addressed the issue in 1988, I think, and there were a few publications in 1990, and then there was a long silence, but almost all authors, at least so far, are supportive of this idea. But we will have to see what governments think of this. Thomas.
So, Fred, you mentioned that somebody was out there whose name is not known to us, is trying to challenge the permanence of boundaries by referring to the fact that rise of sea level is
he's from Iceland.
Is a fundamental change of circumstance.
Yeah.
And under the Vienna Treaty on Treaties, of course, we have the general rule that treaties may terminate because of fundamental change of circumstance, but that doesn't apply to boundaries. So isn't it as simple as that?
Well, that is my view. But I will send you the article. I think the author is a student from Iceland.
I know who it is.
You know who it is.
I don't necessarily agree with you.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much, Fred. That was great. If I could, I'd add a little bit of a geographical perspective into the equation. One thing I would say is that the concept to really grab hold of is the idea of relative sea level rise. Because what we're really interested in is the way in which the ocean and the rise in the oceans interact with the shoreline. And what I would also say, without worrying too much about everyone's personal hygiene, but one needs to be beware of the bathtub. Because many of the projections that we see in the literature simply relate a rise in sea level to inundation on the coast by the rise marching up the contours, as it were. And that's simply not true in reality of how sea level interacts with the land. So when one analyzes sea level rise, one needs to think about how each individual coastal ecosystem interacts with a changing sea level. So we do have coastlines, such as mangrove coastlines on mainlands, where the mangrove can adapt and change its own vertical position in response to sea level. And there we have issues that around sea level rise, which are really to do with coastal land use and management, and the idea of coastal squeeze, where the impact of human activities on coastal environments compromises the ability of the coastline to adapt. And in the Pacific Island states context, the issue is we have coral, mainly coral baselines and islands, where we have the outer limits of the coral atolls have been stable in geological timeframes. So they've been stable for hundreds of years. And the islands within those coral atolls have shown a remarkable degree of permanence. They may migrate within in space, but they remain above sea level. And our concern in that context is the ability of these ecosystems to adapt, where we have ocean acidification and ocean warming compromising the ability of the coral reef to keep up with accelerated sea level rise, which you indicated. But you mentioned the accelerated sea level rise over the last 50 years or so. The Webb and Kench study is a very interesting one of looking at mid-Pacific coral atolls over the time frame of since the Second World War, and comparing the aerial photography with his modern satellite imagery, and finding that 86% of features were either the same size or bigger, which goes contrary to the narrative of inundation of small island Pacific states.
Yeah.
Their regional practice is now coordinated, whereby they're defining baselines and limits and depositing them with the UN, and essentially saying, here's our line in the water. But that potentially is that decoupling between the land dominating the sea.
Yeah.
And it's a real question mark whether that would be accepted by other states, but as far as I'm aware, none of that regional practice has been protested.
Thanks for the addition. Yes.
What is your opinion about the carbon sequestration, like a mechanism to reduce or mitigate the global warming?
I'm not a scientist. So I think you'd better ask the question to a scientist. I could only look at the international law implications, and that means that the sequestration need to be done in accordance with the rules, the current rules, or if they are not adequate, new rules of international law. There again, London Convention comes into play. Does it apply? Is it adequate? Similar issues like ocean iron fertilization. But again, I mean, when you ask about the effectiveness,
The legal effects.
okay, the legal effects. Yeah, that depends again on what the negative effects for the marine environment would be. So you need more information probably there again about the technical aspects of carbon dioxide sequestration methods. And I'm not an expert on the technical aspects, I'm afraid. Could I just, in 1 minute, mention to you to finalize, because we really need to stop, is the other existential issue for some of these Pacific Island states and the Maldives. Can they continue as a state? There are all kinds of ideas, and people are really thinking about it. What do you do? Where would you resettle people in other countries? Which other countries would be willing to accept? This is an issue that will have to be addressed seriously in the coming decades. And probably the best option seems to be for in the Pacific, for all the states involved, 5 or 6 states involved, together with a few others with more higher level, bigger islands, to ultimately sort of merge into a federation so that you keep your entitlements as a state over all these maritime areas. But of course that all depends on the negotiations. So just what I tried to say at the beginning is that these two examples, the rising sea level, but also the ocean iron fertilization, are just they are examples of issues that we are confronting and that we really need, like marine bioprospecting, to develop new law, and we need all the help we can get to cope with all these problems, and that international law is a living organism in itself, is continuously developing, and that I hope that many of you will be able in the coming decades to contribute to these developments in international law. Thank you.